gal kilinda pa umuya lakini nasal sakalinda ya gamun asa nas gera jede sai atirto de be kunsuni malu ga ta abu nas gede de nas takun ina ga abu nas gede malu muskilo sunu jayan ayan sunu kulu iya haja kulu batal yala lebes kalam da adil kina kali nas ga yurgulu tomu.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, this is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. The Speaker of the National Parliament, Nunu Kumba, has appointed Ambrose Lomin Pitia as the new First Deputy Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly. The South Sudan Revenue Authority has collected 956 billion South Sudanese pound in just under 8 months, the highest revenue ever recorded by the institution. And President Salva Kiir has dismissed Lieutenant General Khalil Butrus Bura from his position as a Deputy Director General of the General Intelligence Bureau within the National Security Service, along with several other senior government officials in a series of degrees issued last evening. These stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Madrama James, and now the news in details. The Speaker of the National Legislative Assembly, Nunu Kumba, has appointed Ambrose Lomin Pitia as the new First Deputy Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly. The announcement was made during an extraordinary sitting of the Parliament held on Thursday morning. Pitia, who is also a senior SPLMIO member, replaces Oyed Nathaniel Pirino, who was removed from the position in August. Oyed is currently acting as a leader of a faction of the SPLMIO opposition group. Oyed's removal came through a presidential decree which was revoked the appointment of Deng Deng Akon, Speaker of the Council of State, and Farouk Gatkuath, Chief Whip of the SPLMIO in the National Legislative Assembly. Oyed has been in exile since March following the arrest of First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar. According to the Speaker's order, the appointment of Pitia was based on a recommendation by Ambassador Stephen Parkwall, the interim chairman of the SPLMIO faction in Juba, following consultation with the President Salva Kiir. A clerk of the Assembly read the order this morning.
The exercise of the powers conferred upon me under Regulation 6472-154 of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly Conduct of Business Regulations 2011 as amended 2021 and cognizant of the letter without reference number dated 20th August 2025 from Honorable Ambassador Stephen Parkwall, Interim Chairman of the SPLM-IO Party RS Juba, nominating Honorable Ambrose Lomin Pitia to replace Right Honorable Nathaniel Oyed Pirino, First Deputy Speaker of the TNLA, and based on further consultation and approval of His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Sudan, I, Nunu Kumba, the Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, do hereby issue this office order number 11 for the appointment of Honorable Ambrose Lomin Pitia as the First Deputy Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, signed under my hand in Juba this 4th day of the month of September 2025. Right Honorable Dr. Nunu Kumba, Speaker, Transitional National Legislative Assembly.
In a separate order, Speaker Nunu Kumba relieved Makwach Ngong from his position as a clerk of the Assembly. Makwach was appointed as a deputy chairman of the Relief and Rehabilitation Commission on Wednesday evening. The Speaker then appointed Santino Madol Deng as the new clerk of the Assembly. The South Sudan Revenue Authority has collected 956 billion South Sudan pounds in just under 8 months, the highest ever the highest revenue ever recorded by the institution. According to Commissioner General Simon Akwendeng, the entire amount was transferred to the Ministry of Finance and Planning. He said only 9% of the total revenue remain with the Revenue Authority to manage its operation. Akwe said the increase in revenue collection is due to the commitment of the leadership and staff of the institution. He also said the authority is being built on integrity, professionalism and accountability to support South Sudan economy stability and growth. Akwe made the remark during a ceremony in Juba on Wednesday to welcome the newly appointed Deputy Commissioner General, John Mading Bol Makwach.
From January, when we started with Honorable Taban, we collected 93 billion and it was remitted and salaries were paid. We collected 77 billion in February, because it was a short month, and salaries were paid. We collected 132 billion in March and salaries were paid. We collected 139 billion in April and salaries were paid. And in May, we collected 122 billion. In June, same amount, just a difference of points, 122 billion. And in July, we collected 151 billion. That is the other month. And in August, we have just collected 120 billion. The share of South Sudan Revenue Authority out of all this is 9%. 9% is what remains with us here.
Akwe also said the authority is working on the value-added tax VAT bill before it's submitted to the economic cluster.
We are working on the VAT bill. It's not a secret. The value-added tax bill. We contracted a consultant, and we are at about 85% into finishing the bill. It will be presented to the economic cluster because the sales tax regime that you are implementing is a lazy one. It's a lazy regime. It cannot bring money. For our 2024-2025 budget, the sales tax only accrued 0.16 of total revenue that we collected. But in all the countries, including Burundi, everyone is implementing the VAT regime. And it is always number one of all the revenues, followed by PIT. So we have to graduate from sales tax regime to VAT regime, so that when you are taking this water, already taxes have been paid. But as I talk to you, you are taking that water, Murphy taxes for. Where will government get money from if you don't introduce VAT to finance roads, finance hospitals, and to finance schools, among other government services?
He added that Revenue Authority is working on the Tax Procedure Act to help prevent double taxation.
We are also working on the TPA, the Tax Procedure Act. Tax Procedure Act is a document that will give us how to implement the Taxation Act itself, how to implement the Custom Act, how to implement taxes at 3 levels of government. That is the national government, where we are, the state government, and the local government. So that somebody at the local government should not tax companies that are being taxed at the state government. And at the state level, you should not tax companies that are taxed by the national government. Otherwise, you will be doing double taxation.
President Salva Kiir has dismissed Lieutenant General Khalil Boutros Bura from his position as a Deputy Director General of the General Intelligence Bureau within the National Security Service, along with the several other senior government officials in a series of decrees issued last evening. The changes were announced in a series of presidential decree read on the state-run SSBC on Wednesday evening. President Kiir did not name a replacement for Lieutenant General Bura in the decree. He also removed Agwek Ring Mabil from his role as a Deputy Chairperson of the Relief and Rehabilitation Commission. Makwaj Chongong was appointed to take over the position. In another decree, the President relieved Dr. Anin Ngot as the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Health. Dr. Kennedy Ganiko was named as the new Undersecretary of the Health. President Kiir also appointed 2 technical advisors. Engineer Charles Barnaba was appointed technical advisor at the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology and Postal Services. Mr. Arith Deng was appointed technical advisor at the Ministry of Investment. The Minister of Labour, James Hothmai, has said that credible statistics are key to effective policy making in South Sudan's labour sector. He made the remark during the launch of an 8-day training organized by the National Bureau of Statistics in Juba. The training, which ran from 3rd to 12th of September 2025, focuses on labour force and migration survey, child labour issues, international labour statistics standards, and the final review of the labour force questionnaire. James Hothmai said employment, migration and livelihood are central to the country's national development. He said the government cannot design effective policies, measure progress, or assess the impact of its program without reliable data. Mai was speaking on a state-run SSBC on Wednesday.
As you all know, reliable data is the backbone of sound policy making in the labor sector, where employment, migration, and livelihoods are at the center of national development. The availability of accurate and up-to-date data is critical. Without credible statistics, we cannot design effective policies, monitor progress, or measure the impact of our intervention on the life of our people.
You are listening to iRadio Afternoon News, and before the international scene, health official in Central Equatoria State says many survivors of sexual violence are not seeking help due to fear of rejection, stigma, and possible retaliation from their communities. Jen Simon, a child protection officer at the United Nations mission in South Sudan, says both girls and boys are affected by sexual violence. She says survivors in conflict-affected areas like Yei River County are often afraid to report the abuse due to threats from perpetrators. Janice spoke in an exclusive interview on Sundown show last evening.
Reporting about sexual violence for cases of rape and other forms of sexual violence. We encounter not only girls being raped, also we have boys who have been raped in the same situation. And then like the cases in Ye, there are some elements that will not allow the survivors to come and report. One of them is distance. 2, insecurity. 3, there is lack of will from the survivors to report. First, they are not willing to come for the fear of repetition, for the fear of stigma from the community.
Joyce Lucas Zakayo, a social worker at Juba Teaching Hospital, is encouraging survivors to seek medical support. She says healthcare workers have followed strict procedures to support survivors with dignity and confidentiality.
For us, a social worker, we have a guide principle to work with survivors. We receive the survivors, you ask the consent for survivors. Then the survivor is accept. I do the counseling. We have a psychological assessment for each case plan. Then we do also action plan. We see the situation of survivor because the confidentiality for survivor, because some survivor they are coming, they are fearing. They are not need to discuss or need to talk with me. Then I'm asking you, it's better to talk with me. I give chance. If they accept, I talk with survivor. I give you the psychosocial support. Then I refer to medical.
Dr. Paul Opi Dorbe, a clinical officer, is urging survivors to report cases immediately and visit health facility for early treatment.
My message briefly to the public: if GBV or rape or sexual assault happened to you, you have to report to somebody, police station or health facility for the early health intervention, which some other diseases can be prevented early. But when you report late, it can be impossible to give you the medical service.
In 2022, South Sudan established a court to handle gender-based violent cases. By 2024, over 300 cases were reported in Juba, resulting in various sentences. You are listening to iRadio Afternoon News, and to the international scene, I'm joined by Maria Johnson.
Dozens of people have died in Nigeria's northern Niger state after a boat carrying about 100 people sank in a river. The reportedly overloaded boat carrying passengers including children capsized when it struck a submerged tree stump near the Kwasawa community in Borgo local government area, officials said. The state's emergency agency said 29 people had died and more than 50 others were rescued, with search operations continuing. Elsewhere, President Donald Trump has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn a lower court decision that found many of his sweeping tariffs were illegal. In a petition filed late on Wednesday, the administration asked the justice to quickly intervene to rule that the president has the power to impose such import taxes on foreign nations. The case could upend Trump's economic and foreign policy agenda and force the U.S. to refund billions in tariffs. And finally, investigations are underway after at least 16 people were killed when a cable railway derailed and hit a building in Lesbon, Portugal. More than 20 others were injured and 5 in a serious condition, authorities said last night, and a child had sustained minor wounds. Police say they are working with the company, which is popular with tourists, to ascertain who was on board and what caused the crash. That's all from the stories making headlines in Africa and beyond. And now back to you, Madrama James.
Thank you indeed, Baria Johnson. Up next is Sports News with Emmanuel Joseph Akile.
Qatar FC South Sudan's representatives at the Sikafa Kagame Cup will take on Sudan's Al Hilal Wad Madani this afternoon at Isamuhu Stadium in Tanzania. Qatar has been placed in Group B alongside Al Hilal Omdurman Sudan, Al Hilal Wad Madani Sudan and Mogadishu FC Somalia. Meanwhile, the brightest stars have completed preparations ahead of their clash with DR Congo tomorrow at Juba National Stadium. The highly anticipated fixture is part of the African World Cup qualifiers. Northern Ireland manager Michael O'Neill said his side's late arrival at Luxembourg for Thursday's 2026 World Cup qualifier was a little bit frustrating, but he remains happy with their match preparation. The squad assembled in Liverpool on Sunday using the facilities of the Premier League champions for a training before traveling the day before the first game of their qualifying campaign. And finally, Arina Sabalenka has produced a consistency at the Grand Slam tournaments which is unrivaled in the women's game. With a powerful style translating across court surfaces, the world number one has made 12 semi-final appearances in her past 13 major tournaments, with the latest coming when she faces Jessica Pegula at the US Open on Thursday. But here's the kicker: Sabalenka's tendency to combust at a critical juncture means only 3 of those have resulted in titles. None of the 27-year-old Belarusians' runs at this year's majors have ended with the trophy. That's all from the world of sport.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Now to wrap up this news bulletin, a look at the top stories once again. The Speaker of the National Parliament, Nunu Kumba, has appointed Ambrose Lomin Pitia as the new first Deputy Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly. The South Sudan Revenue Authority has collected 956 billion South Sudan pound in just under 8 months, the highest revenue ever recorded by the institution. And President Salva Kiir has dismissed Lieutenant General Khalil Butrus Bura from his position as a Deputy Director General of the General Intelligence Bureau within the National Security Service, along with several other senior government officials, in a series of decrees issued last evening. That's the end of iRadio News. If there's a story or an event you like iRadio to cover or report about, please send for us a text message on +211 925 287 870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page iRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at iRadio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at the 1:30 hour. I am Madrama James. Thanks for listening.
Sounds of the Week on